Matthew 12 and 38 through 45. Let's go ahead and just read through the verses, and then we'll go ahead and discuss.
All right. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answering said, "Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you." But he answering said to them, "A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, but no sign shall be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the great fish, so shall the Son of Adam be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Men of Nineveh shall stand up in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And look, a greater than Jonah is here. The sovereignness of the south shall rise up in the judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it. For she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Shammah. And look, a greater than Shammah is here. Now when the unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through the dry places, seeking rest, and finds none. Then it says, I shall return to my house from which I came, and when it comes, it finds it empty, swept, and decorated. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last of that man is worse than the first. So it shall also be with this wicked generation.
Okay, very good. So let us look up at a few of these things here. We go back to verse 38. When we see it starts off talking about some of these scribes and Pharisees. Again, we talked about at some point the scribes and the Pharisees. The Pharisees really were the religious leaders of the time. You had Pharisees, you had Sadducees. The Sadducees were kind of the political, figureheads. The ones who were the priests, the ones who were connected to Rome, and Rome was in their pocket, the Sadducees. Pharisees were really the real religious ones, and then the scribes they literally were that. They were the writers. They were the ones who, if you wanted to go and have a marriage, the scribe would write up your certificate. If you wanted to have a divorce, he would have your your papers, right? And so they were the ones who, they wrote the Torah scrolls, all of these things. And so the scribes were knowledgeable of the scriptures, and as was the Pharisees. And so they oftentimes kind of hung out with one another. And so when we look here, when some of them come together, they say to Yeshua, they say to him, teacher, which is interesting because if you were a Pharisee, if you were kind of belonging to kind of the religious factions, I don't know who these people were. They're unnamed. But I'm sure they had a teacher somewhere. Right? They belonged to a particular school of thought, these Pharisees. Right? And so when you think about a teacher in this time, is very important in the culture. If you look at let's look at the word there, teacher. In verse 38. pull that up on the Strongs there, where it says instructor. It's 1320, teacher, didaskalos. Didaskalos. Right, that Greek word there. Instructor, doctor, master, teacher. Right? And so that word teacher in the Greek gives you kind of all the things that it gives you in the Hebrew. But again, when we're thinking about the people, these Pharisees, they had an instructor, they had a teacher, they had a doctor, right, that they belonged to, right? A master even. If you look at, and so for them to call Messiah this, there's one of two things going on here. Either they're showing him a type of respect, or they've pledged their allegiance to him, possibly, or there's some other things going on. And so when we think about, so that's the Greek instructor, doctor, master, teacher, right? In the Hebrew, teacher is more, right? Which is actually an archer, right? It's literally an archer. An archer, someone who has a bow and arrow. He takes that bow and arrow. He's an archer. He's not somebody who just, like, when you think about, like, I like to fish, but I'm not an angler, right? Right? I'm not a professional fisher, even though I like fishing, right? And so an archer is not just somebody who he don't just know how to use a bow and arrow, right? He's proficient. Like he's like on the little Robin Hood thing. Whenever the guy shoots the arrow, and then Robin Hood comes and he shoots the arrow. He shoots the arrow and it splits the thing in half, right? He's an archer. Right? So more means archer, but it also means teacher, right? And so this word more, when you think about sin, is to miss the mark. Sin is to miss the mark. And so the more, the teacher, the archer trains in shooting straight. You want to shoot the target. You want to not sin. You want to aim for the target and actually hit it, right? And not miss it and sin, right? And so that's the Hebrew. In Aramaic, it's a similar word, mara, similar in Aramaic, which combines the root that denotes authority and lordship with the suffix that indicates a person or one who possesses a quality. So the word is one who possesses a quality of authority and lordship, right? And so the thought process, when you think about these people going to Messiah and literally calling him teacher, it really is kind of a title that they've given to him, potentially, as I said, pledging their allegiance to him. Now go over to Matthew 7 and 21. What's that say?
Matthew 7 and 21. Not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, shall enter into the reign of the heavens.
Okay, very good. So this is another word, master. It's a different word, but it's the same concept, right? A master is a teacher, is a lord at this time, in this culture, right? And so they're going to him, saying to him, teacher, which maybe if he's a regular man, this strokes his ego. Teacher, master, let me have a word with you. Right? If he's a regular man, he's like, oh, yes, yeah. What is it that you want? Right? And then they say, we wish to see a sign from you. which is contradictory though, which helps us to understand what it is that why Yeshua rebukes these people in right when he starts talking, right? Because when they say to him, Master, it's complimentary at first, but then when they call him Master and then they ask for a sign, is he who he says he is or isn't he? If you're acknowledging him as the master teacher, why are you also questioning who he is? And so they asked the question, we wish to see a sign. And so they understood, say for instance, Daniel. Pull up Daniel 7 and 13 and 14.
Daniel what?
7, 13, and 14.
I was looking in the night visions and saw one like the son of Enosh coming with the clouds of the heavens. And he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And to him was given rulership and preciousness and a reign, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His rule is an everlasting rule which shall not pass away, and his reign that which shall not be destroyed.
Okay, very good. So they know that when the Son of Man, it says Enosh, because this part of Daniel is in fact Aramaic, and so that word there, they left as Enosh, but it's actually the same as man there. The one who is Messiah, who is to come. They understand that when he comes, when the Messiah comes, he's coming with self-evident signs of who he is. And so they have a particular understanding of what the Messiah is supposed to look like. And so, but there is a type of discrepancy, because when you think about Messiah, who he was actually forming this kingdom. He's putting together this kingdom, this people who are the kingdom of Elohim, him being the ruler. But there's this part of the fact that they're still under this rule of Rome. And they're still, in the situation that they are in. And so there's kind of a discrepancy, right? But when you think about the people, again, this is kind of a reoccurring situation when you have kind of the regular people able to look and see what it is that Messiah is doing and say to themselves, that is Messiah, based on the things that he's doing. And then you have these learned people who have all of these things, these qualifications that he has to meet all of, right, in order to be who the people already know that he is, right? And so they want him to check all the check marks, and so there's doubt, right? And so they seek a sign, right? Those people seek a sign because they're not able to be just convinced by the same thing that everybody else is being convinced by. And so Yeshua, whenever he responds, he says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. He's referring to these people who's talking to them, and because they're faithless, these people. They're exhibiting doubt in who he's doing. He's living a particular way. He's doing certain things. And there's a mass amount of people who's able to see all the things that he's doing, and they know who he is without a shadow of a doubt. But these other people who see the same things, they want to sit up here and have these nice things to say to him. Oh, master, oh, teacher, show us a sign. Right? It's contradictory what they're doing. Right? And so out of their mouth, they're saying that he's teacher, but in their hearts, they don't believe. Let's look at Hebrews 11 and 6. Hebrews 11 and 6. What's that say?
Hebrews 11 and 6. But without belief it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him.
So he's not a rewarder of those who just halfway seek him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's not a rewarder of those who just say master, teacher, but they don't treat him as their master.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a rewarder of those people. He's a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him, but he's not a rewarder of those who just regular seek him. But it's impossible, actually, by the way, to please him if you don't have faith. Without without persuasion, without being totally persuaded, without being totally convinced that he is who he says he is, it's impossible to please him. And so he didn't have nothing good to say to these people. You're a wicked and adulterous generation. Mm-hmm. Like, how you even going to let something like that even come out your mouth? He says to these people. Right? Hebrews says that for he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is.
That he is, yeah.
They didn't believe that he was. They trying to see a sign. Show us a sign. Prove to us that you who you say that you are. They wanted receipts. They wanted receipts. Right? But Yeshua said he already done showed his receipts. When he raised them people from the dead. When he healed them lepers. Right? When he caused them blind people to see. That's the receipts. Right there. And so he's already given them a reason to believe. And they saw the reason. That's why they even called him teacher in the first place. But yet and still they didn't believe. He said they wicked. You a wicked and adulterous generation because you asking for a sign and you ain't going to get no sign but the sign that didn't even happen yet. And it ain't going to happen till it's all over with. He going to live his whole situation out until the end. And then that's when you're going to get a sign after the fact. After he did everything that he going to do in this world, on this earth, in his physical body, he going to do all those things first and die and be dead. And then that's going to be a sign after the fact. He said what he said. You ain't getting no sign. That's what he said, right? You can't have a sign except for the thing that ain't even going to happen yet. We don't know necessarily what part of the journey, but this could really be in like the first year of his situation.
I mean, so basically, he prophesies to them what the sign is going to be.
And yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't know if at this point he's talked about this whole thing with this 3 days in the earth yet. This might be one of the first times that he mentions this whole situation. And even at that, for somebody who don't know what that means, which if this is the first time he's speaking about it, is strange. But if you think about Jonah and the fish, he was gone and then he comes back. And so it's mystical like everything else that he says. He spoke to these people in parables. They don't know what it means. So So he kind of gives them a hint of what the sign is, but it's still mystery to them because at this point there's no way they can understand what he's saying. Because even if they connect the dots and say, oh, it's a sign of Jonah, that means he's going to be gone for 3 days and 3 nights and come back. What that mean? He's going on a trip for a while. Like the connection couldn't have been made. So he basically said there is no sign.
Yeah, there was no sign.
No sign for you. No sign for you. But go ahead.
I had, and this is seriously not at this level, but I felt like this lady was trying to do something like this to me when I went in for math tutoring at this place. And she was like, well, you shouldn't need the answer keys. So she starts throwing the answer keys away. And I'm looking at her like, I'm like, I need those answer keys. I was like, I'm not gonna think too hard today with these kids. I don't really care what the subject is. It could be 3 plus 3. I want the answer keys. But it was just the way she did it to me was almost like how these people was, like where I kind of felt a certain kind of way about it. There's a way that you could you can do things to people which you're like, okay, so you're basically, I don't want to, it's just the way, like their attitude, I should say. You know what I mean?
The Pharisees and the scribes.
Like it's like
the
a
Pharisees,
test, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to test you.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to kind of understand what's going on, because it's not, I mean, you can see by the way Messiah is answering them, but because he answers them in that way, it causes you to have to be able to look back and say, why is he talking to them like that? It seems like they're kind of asking a real question. But if they truly did understand who Messiah was, and them calling him teacher as they did, they never should have asked him that question.
Disrespect.
It was disrespect. It was disrespect.
Just like he went into that guy's house and he didn't give him any water and he didn't give him any.
Yeah.
He didn't give him all.
It's the
these
same. It's the
things.
same kind of a people, right? And so when you look back, when you go back, go back to Hebrews 11. When we think about this idea of earnestly seeking Him, right? He's a rewarder of those who earnestly seek Him, right? That word there is to search out. Here, click on that word there. Earnestly seek Him.
11 and what?
11 and 6. Hebrews 11 and 6, where we were. Earnestly seek Him.
And that diligently is
Diligently, earnestly, yes. All of that.
one word.
It's G1567.
Oh, yeah.
To search out. Right? It says search out, investigate, crave, demand. By Hebraism, worship. And so this word to search out is a Hebraism. It's a euphemism, right? It's a Hebrew euphemism. So an equivalent to that would be darash, right? Darash. Hebrew. Pull up Hebrew 1875. H1875. Because that's a Hebrew equivalent of this word here in the Greek, which is to tread or frequent, to follow, to seek, to ask, to inquire, right? An inquisition, right? It's where the word midrash comes from, right? When we study, when we investigate, right? When you dig deep into the situation, trying to understand what it is. But he's saying that you're supposed to be digging deep into who the Most High is. And then you'll be rewarded. You could go into this. You look in Proverbs and talk about wisdom and compares it to these jewels. I digged a whole bunch of holes in the ground. I ain't never found no jewels. Right? Because I ain't did enough diligently searching in the dirt.
Yeah.
Right? But if I was to do it, I would be rewarded. Right? But there's a work that's involved in it. It's a task that's involved, but it's not a vain task. You'll be rewarded when you do it. So he's saying you got to put some work into it. Right? You have to be invested in this thing. Right? And all of this stuff is connected to your faith. The fact that you're convinced and persuaded of a thing, which these people, they weren't. Right?
You say you gotta know where to dig.
Yes, you do have to know where to dig. I probably really wasn't looking for a job.
Without, you need a metal detector. Yeah, they got stuff to help you. You know,
Something.
you better have the tools. Just going out here digging in random
Just
places.
random holes. So Yeshua says, right? He says in verse 40 that for as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the stomach of the fish, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. And so again, when he says that, we have an understanding now, hindsight, we can look back and say, oh, he's talking about when he dies and resurrects. But if we're on the other side, not knowing that this is what's going to happen, and this is probably one of the first times that he talks about doing this, it's a response, but really it's a non-response to them. They don't know what's going on. But, you know, just kind of as a side note, when you think about what he's saying here, you know, we can dismiss this Good Friday situation. Right? We could take Good Friday and just throw it in the trash. Right? There's not 3 days and 3 nights. Right? From Friday to, like he said, I'm not going to give you a sign. I'm not going to give you a sign. Except for the fact that of the sign of Jonah, which is similar unto the Son of Man, where I'm going to be in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. It don't even say 3 days. It say 3 days and 3 nights. So the whole concept of parts of 3 days falls short because he didn't say that he was going to be in the earth for parts of 3 days. He said he's going to be in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And so somewhere in the middle of the actual week is where he had to have been buried in order to fulfill this 3 days and 3 nights situation. Right? Which is interesting that we have this situation where we think about this idea of, you know, him being killed, you know, going into the weekly Sabbath. It's an impossibility according to what it is that Messiah, the only thing that he said was going to be a sign of who he was. So it seems kind of important of a situation. If it's the only sign that he's going to give, why don't we put more weight on that? But I want to go down to, because if we continue and look at what he's doing here, so he talks about the sign, and then he deals with the people of, he compares these people to the people of Nineveh. He's talking about the scribes and the Pharisees, and he said, read 41 for us, Matthew 12 and 41.
It says, men of Nineveh shall stand up in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented and at the preaching of Jonah And look, a greater than Jonah is here.
The people that from Nineveh are able to look at these people and condemn those people because they're greater than them because they was able to hear something and believe. They didn't have to see like these people saw Yeshua doing things. The only reason why they get to the place of calling him master is because they seen him do stuff. So they physically experienced Messiah working. These people just heard a message from the prophet and believed. Them people greater than just, he's saying this generation, but he's really saying you people. He's talking to them, right? And then he gives another example with the queen of the south. Another example, she just hears of wisdom, right? And she's able to condemn you people because she just heard and believed. And then Yeshua is so funny to me. And then you are looking at somebody who's greater than Jonah and Solomon. Sometimes he just don't pull no punches, do he? He just tell it like it is. You looking at somebody that's greater than all of these people.
Just backhand compliment. You know, like,
I don't know if it's a compliment.
well,
You just dissing them. You just all diss.
They seen it and they still didn't believe.
They seen it. They seen it. So when you think about their position, it should put them above the examples where all they did was hear. But they was able to experience less and the result was greater. Paul talks about the fact that faith comes by hearing. All they did was hear. But they yet was still faithless, right? And then he even compares their faithlessness, their disbelief, to demonic oppression. He calls them demonic. It's disbelief. He's comparing to somebody who's filled with demons.
Something wrong with their brain. That's what he said. There's something wrong with your brain. Right in front of you.
We be talking bad to these people, man. You should crack me up.
Can I get a contrast of what you're saying real quick?
Go ahead.
Pull up Matthew chapter 9. Just going back. Matthew 9, we'll start at 28. It says, and when he came into the house, the blind men came to him, and Yeshua said to them, do you believe that I am able to do this? And they said to him, yes, master. Then he touched their eyes, and he said, according to your belief, let it be to you. So he didn't even just take it on, no, according to your belief. And it says, and their eyes were open, and Yeshua, let's get the rest. But look at that. Like, if they wouldn't have believed, they probably wouldn't have been healed. Because he was like, could he do it or not? They'd have thought that in their mind. Would they be able to see it? But they had to believe it. Then they believed.
Yeah.
So you got to believe.
It's key. It's key to all of this. And so, when we look at this whole situation, they started off with disbelief. Right? That's where they began, at disbelief. Right? And so that's why where it ends, Yeshua ends it at comparing these people and calling them a wicked generation and likening them unto these ones who are just completely filled with demons. And so we have to be able to understand that, when we think about Messiah, when we think about who he is, when we think about what he has done, and the fact that he is in fact, the master and ruler of everything, right? We have to be able to understand that this life that we live is in fact spiritual, right? It's a spiritual life, even though we live in this physical realm, right? And so we have to live this life by faith, right? We have to live this life by faith. It's impossible to live this life outside of faith. And he expects for us to walk this life by faith. And again, we don't have to be part of and experience these great miracles and things. He gives these examples when he talks about the people in Nineveh and the queen of the south. When we are able to hear and understand who the master Yeshua is, that speaks for itself. And so, again, when you look at kind of the way that Messiah deals with these so-called learned people, it's almost as if they kind of learn themselves into disbelief, right? And where it is kind of a journey and a task to dig in and search after the Most High, but at the same time, it's not a complicated thing. It's a thing that takes perseverance. And it's a thing that takes persistence. It's a thing that takes that requires your desire, but it's not like it's a hard, complicated thing, right? And especially not the idea of Messiah and who he is, right? Maybe when we get into all these doctrinal things and maybe these things can be complicated seemingly, but the most important thing about any of this, that's the easy part. Understanding who Messiah is and what he came to do for us, and us accepting him for who he is. All right, does anybody have any thoughts, questions, comments about any of those things there? All right, so that being said, I kind of want to just end on that note of, for us really, there's certain things that we really have to kind of have solidified in our situation, right? And not allow some of these so-called greater things to kind of cloud, the main point. The main point is that Yeshua came, lived, and died, and rose from the dead after 3 days, and went back to the Father and sent back his Ruach HaKodesh to come and dwell on the inside of us to cause us to be able to walk in his ways. Right? That's it. You get that right there. When you get that right there, that's it. Right? Then it's just about walking it out. Right? All these other things. When is this day? How do we do this? Why don't we eat that? All of these things is just part of the journey. Right? But the gospel message of the fact that Yeshua came to rescue us from death and bring us into life That's the thing that we must be convinced and persuaded of. Right? Not how we do this, what's a day, when is the new moon, right? All of these things that's not the thing that you got to have faith in. The thing that you got to have faith in is what it is that Yeshua came to do for you. And believing wholeheartedly in that and walking that out.
Yep.
All right, so that being said, we are going to be done for now. Y'all willing, we'll be back on next Shabbat to continue our look at the words of the Master. And for now, we'll say Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. We wanted to